Hi everybody, welcome to the WATS1020 Intro to JavaScript Arrays and Functions assignment walkthrough. This is going to be a little bit different. I'm not going to really show you exactly how to build this assignment. I'm going to show you techniques around it and things to think about. But then I'm going to do some smaller videos that sort of address some specific techniques and everything. So hopefully this will work out to be a little bit better and easier for you all to kind of see. This assignment is to build a feature that we find used on websites a lot. For example, if we go to Google News here, you can see that some of these descriptions end in a little ellipses. They've obviously broken a sentence partly here. And we can see that here as well, and here. And if we when we expand it, it gets bigger, but we still see the ellipses here. What they've done is they've pulled out the first sentence or some sentence out of the description or out of the article, and they're trying to make little intro descriptions that we can read that will sort of entice us to click more. We can see the same thing happening on Yahoo, although they don't even put an ellipses in. They just break the sentence and then put a link to the website. So here there's an ellipses and then a link to Good Morning America. Here this sentence just cuts off. And then there's a link to International Business Times Australia. So you can see how people are taking these longer pieces of text and cutting them down to be shorter in order to provide you with these short descriptions on the web page. That's called truncation. Truncating something is the process of just making something shorter or smaller or more abbreviated, you know. So if you truncate text, you cut off words or characters of text. So individual characters of text are letters, and it used to be that would be a really common way of doing truncation. Just count how many letters. So you'd say, I want 250 letters here, or 140 characters, which is what Twitter limits you to. The problem with that is that you can break words in the middle, and in fact, it's better to break a sentence at a word level than to break words in half, because not only do you get a lot of just awkward meaninglessness if you break words in half, but you do have the possibility of even being sort of offensive and creating misunderstandings, when words break off and something becomes a word that you didn't intend to publish on your website. So that can always be tricky. What we're going to do is create a truncate words function for an imaginary website application. So we have an index file here that just links in this JavaScript, and the JavaScript just outputs to the console again. So it's not anything terribly fancy in terms of the web interactive side yet. But what we want to do is create the function called truncate words that will process this text according to this word limit and will give us back the shortened version of the text that we could use as the little blurb on our website, the little introductory material to hopefully lead people to click that link. So this is a very common situation to come up. We often use these. Many of the frameworks that we have access to will have different types of truncation or truncate words, truncate characters, and functions built into them. So we're going to look at how those might be built. To do that, we're going to run through sort of these core requirements. So these are the base requirements, just meant to remind you of those base requirements. You still should check the README file and review those, especially if you're going for the stretch requirements. There are some suggested stretch requirements there. We're going to use arrays. We're going to create a function. We're going to use the split. We're going to use the length attribute of an array to find out what's there. We're going to use the join function to recreate strings, and we're also going to use the slice function to slice the array. So those are detailed in a little more specificity on the basic requirements in the README file itself. So I wanted to kind of play with some of these different things that I've listed here for you to check out, and you can look these up in like Mozilla Developers Network references, and you'll be able to find good descriptions of how to use all these different functions. But it's difficult to kind of imagine what things look like, and so I want to point you in a few good directions. First of all, I want to remind you that this developer tools that you have here is really powerful. And we've all seen how we can sort of write JavaScript in the console right here, and we can get results. And that's great. But something that you might not have discovered yet is the snippets capability, which is really useful when you're working through projects like this, because you could have a page open over here that was actually showing you, you know, some documentation or something. If you go into sources, you'll find that this panel is in sources, and we can click on snippets. And if you go into snippets, then you can create new snippets which we can then edit. So we can actually edit in here and say, do that hello world alert again. And then we can fold down this area that we don't need right now. Fold it down with this button. We can, oh, actually, we do need it right now. we can make it smaller, like this a little bit. And then we can hit play, and it will play this JavaScript and run it in the browser. And we can see the console results right here. But we can also, you know, see whatever happens up here. So I'll make the console results just a little bit bigger here so that we can see a little more of what's going on. And all of these elements are really useful and will come in more useful throughout the quarter. This is a super useful tool for debugging your JavaScript when it's actually, especially when it's actually on a live web page. First of all, I just wanted to go over, this is the way that we write functions. We typically assign them to variables, so because we want to be able to refer to them later on. That's the whole point of a function, is to have code that's reusable. And that is the basic way that we define a function. Now, any code that we write between these two curly braces is going to be part of that function. So we could say console.log hello from function. And then we can call that function on a different line. And notice this is outside of the scope of this function definition here. So this is the definition of the function. It's called my function. And then I call it. And when I call a function, I always use these two parentheses to call the function. I hit play. And down here in my console, I can see that I have hello from function. Remember that these curly braces define different enclosures where code runs. It's different groupings of code. So whenever you define a function, you want to make sure that all of the code that you want that function to run is between these curly braces. It's very similar to when you define a loop. So for example, let's do a loop here. And so now I've defined this loop, and I'm defining the variable, the counter variable I. I use var I to keep that scope local. Remember, when we first use a variable, we should always prefix that with var. Then I'm checking to see if I is less than 10. If it's less than 10, I'm going to continue looping. And then at the end of each loop, I'm going to do I++, which means add 1 to the number I. So I is going to be an integer. That's a whole number that keeps track of how many times I've gone through this loop. And so in this loop, I'm just going to console.log hello. And what I'll see on the output is a stack of hellos and then one final hello from function. I'm going to chain it to finished saying hello from function, just so that I know that that's what I'm looking for. So when I play this, so I see here that I have a problem. I'm not seeing my hello stack, but as I look up here, I notice that I actually made a mistake when I was writing the insignia here. So again, you're always going to make typos. Always good to go back to the basics and just think about the very base formatting and everything when you're looking for what's preventing your JavaScript from running. So now that I am properly establishing that I equals 0 to begin, I now see hello, 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 and then finish saying hello. So that's exactly what I thought. So now anytime that I want this to happen, I can call my function. But I could also make it a little bit more useful, because I could say I could take an argument in this called num hellos, and instead of saying I is less than 10, I could say I is less than num hellos. And what I'll do is, when I output hello, I'll put the number that I is each time, and that way I'll be able to see how many hellos I've actually output. So now when I call this, I can call it with a number, my function 5, and that number is going to control how many times it says hello before it finishes saying hello. So if I clear the console here, I play this, hello, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, finish saying hello. And so this illustrates another important point when you're looping and when you're dealing with any kind of structures. You want to realize that counting is typically going to start at 0. And so you might need to add or subtract 1 at various points in time to access elements that you want. And so we'll take another look at that in a moment. But for now, that's how we define a function. To go a little bit further than this, we could think of a different function where we put the hellos into an array, and then we would access them differently. So, for example, we could imagine having an array that we called hellos, and that could be full of ways to say hello, like hello, but also bonjour, or hola, or konnichiwa. So we'll stop there, and now we could say, we could take in the number of one of these hellos to return. And what we could say was, we could return hellos hello. So what's going to happen here is that when we call the function, we're sending it a value that is a number. When that number comes into the function, it's being called hello. And so then we can use it when we reference this array. We can use it, and that number is going to be put in there, and that is going to be put in. And instead of returning, I'm actually going to just log it to the console. So now when I hit play, you notice that I get hola. And if I change this to be 1, you notice that I get bonjour. But you notice that bonjour isn't the first one in the list. It's actually the second one in the list. The reason is that this list is 0 indexed. So if I were to just look at this list hellos, I can see this, what this list is, and it's 0 indexed. So this is 0, 1, 2, 3. So if I were to try to access the 4th index on here, I'm going to get an error now. I get undefined. So this is how you access different elements in an array. I can also find out how long that array is by going hellos.length, and it tells me 4. So there are 4 items in the array, which is true. But if I tried to access item number 4, then I get an error. So what I need to keep in mind is that I have to adjust that number. So if I was trying to access the last one in the array, I would access hellos, and then in here I could have hellos.length -1, and that shows me konnichiwa because that's the last one. But if I did hellos.length, then I would get undefined. This also really illustrates the flexibility that you have in terms of referring to the different variables and attributes of your variables. Notice that I can use the reference to this length attribute on hellos to actually indicate which index I want to access. So these different items in the list, their position in this list is called their index, 0, 1, 2, 3. And by accessing this index, I could make sure. So for example, I could always say, always show me the English version at the end. I made a little typo there. And if I play that, I get undefined because the function is asking for number 4. But in here, I will always get whatever word is at index 0, which will be the first word in the list. Now there are other ways to mess with lists as well. We have, for example, the join function, the join method on the list, on the array objects. So we can say console.log hellos.join, and then I'm going to use the pipe character. And if I do that, then I'll see, I'm going to clear the console here. You'll see that it outputs all of the elements of that list, all the items in that array, with the pipe in between them. So that's super handy if you want to, make a comma separated list or a pipe separated list or a tab delimited list. That kind of thing is really handy. It also means that you can do different things like take strings and break them up. So I could say that instead of saying defining the list right here, I could define a list of words in a different way. So I could say word list equals, and then I could say colors, red, orange, green, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. So that word list is a string. When I first mention it, I have to put in var, or else I will get an error. Then I can say word list array equals word list dot split, and split it on a space. And again, I have to prefix this with var. And then I can say console.log word list array, and we should see that this word list array is now an actual list. So we could say, oh really, should just show us the first item in that list, and it shows us red. So in this way, you can see how we can split according to any character that we want to split on. And what it does is wherever it finds that character, it breaks the string and then puts that into an item of the list. So it breaks the string apart on that character. So if you could have comma separating words, you could split it and then put a comma in there, and that would work. You could have whatever characters you want. You could also have a sequence of characters in there. So you could have like dash dash greater than, and wherever it found that dash dash greater than, it would split. So that's totally possible as well. The other thing that you should really remember is that when you split, you should be able to recombine. So I could say var new word list equals word list array dot join, and if I join it with the same space, then I should see that new word list and word list are the same thing, because I split the word list and then I rejoined it and I did them both on the space, so they should be identical. And what we can see is that those two things are totally identical right here. So that's how we can do that. The final method that I want to show you is how to use Splice to remove elements in a list. So I'm going to show you a fairly simple use of Splice. Let's say that this word list of colors, we want to only keep the first 3. What we could say is, we could say var short word list equals word list dot splice 0, 3. Now what that says is, starting at index 0, I want you to keep 3 items, and then because we don't provide any other arguments, it's going to delete the rest. So then let's say console.log short word list. So I'm just going to output that so that we can see that in the console. I'm going to clear the console here. I'm going to go ahead and remove this part up here since we don't need that anymore. And just play. And so that didn't work because I actually was trying to splice on the word list, which, as you notice, is a string. What I need to run the splice on is the word list array, because that's the list. So splice is a method for list objects. So I'm going to try it again now. Now you can see that my short word list is red, orange, yellow. And that's how it's outputting when I just output the list. If I that short word list is actually still an array. If I just call it like that, I can see that it's actually an array here as well. So I could change the number of words that that it kept. I could say keep 6 of these words. And if I hit that, then you notice that it goes up to indigo, but it cuts off violet. And I could also tell it to start at number 3 and keep only 3 of the words. And then you'll see that the 3 words that it keeps are green, blue, indigo. So I can use this splice to break apart this list in a lot of different ways. So those are all the basic things that you need to use to work out this assignment. The rest of it is just putting it all together in the right way. So I will always be available for questions and answers, and let me know if you know how you feel about getting more of hints instead of direct walkthroughs. But for now, hopefully this helps you out. Good luck with the assignment. It's going to be super fun, and have a blast truncating. Take care. Bye.